Welcome. Today I'm going to be going over Alien Artifacts. Now, I actually like this game. I played it one time through and thought it was pretty fun. But there were some things about the game that made it very frustrating. And another thing is that some of the card mechanisms were really hard to understand. And so after painlessly searching through the rulebook here, I couldn't find any explanation on how the majority of the cards actually worked. And then I looked at various YouTube videos of trying to figure out how the cards work, and even though many of them focused on how to actually play the game, and some of it was actually helpful how to play the game, there were still some mechanisms of how to play the game that some of them didn't even mention. I actually had to watch a playthrough of the game to understand how some of those mechanisms of how the game actually works. And so that was a drag, that there wasn't really anyone that explained in full detail how to play this game. And then, of course, once again, nobody really explained how a lot of the cards worked. So watching the full playthrough that I watched was actually pretty helpful because they explained how to play with the cards that they were actually playing with. But there is no information in the rulebook on how the cards work. And there was no reviews that I could find that explain how the cards work either. So it's very frustrating because a lot of the card mechanisms are actually really hard to play with because you just don't know exactly how they work. And so I think I know about maybe 75% of how the cards actually work. So I thought I would use this video to explain at least how I think these cards work. Because once again, there's no rule book that says they don't work that they work in a particular way. So I'm sort of just guessing almost on some of these cards. So if I've got it wrong and you have played this game and you're watching this video and I explain how some of these cards work and that I am totally wrong, just go ahead and leave a comment that I've got it wrong and say actually how that card works or cards work. So we're just going to go with what I assume is how the cards work. Now, before I get started on the cards, I wanted to kind of talk about some of the factions in the game. Now, there are lots of really cool factions in the game. And, you know, Bionics and Clone Clans, for instance, and Community. And this one, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce because it's just a drag to try to pronounce. And then League, and then Star Union, which kind of reminds me of the Master Chief, at least on the male side, the Master Chief from Halo, which is why I picked that faction. But the League and Star Union have almost identical setups and endgame scoring. There is only like one or two differences between them, and that's about it. So when you're playing a two-player game, I would recommend not playing with both of these. So pick something else. One of the players should probably pick something else, because the point of picking a different faction is starting the game a little differently and having different ways of scoring points at the end of the game to see whose strategy will work best. And if you have identical strategies, it doesn't seem like you're really competing against each other because they have exactly the same setup. So it's almost pointless choosing two different factions who have exactly the same setups, almost. So, but the rest of the clans, they all have very different setups, and I'd have to say that the Clone Clans is definitely the most different or diverse, not diverse, but it is the most different setup from all the other clans, or all the other factions, I mean. So the clone clans would probably be my next best choice, or if I want to form a particular strategy, I might go with community next time I play. But these two, clone clans and community, are probably the coolest as far as how you play the game. Not necessarily the coolest looking, but definitely the coolest of setups. So, anyways, so I explained that, and hopefully I'll have a little bit more fun playing with one of those two factions the next time I play this game. Now, one of the things that took me a while to figure out how to play on my own was they all have skills. All of the factions have skills. And Star Union has this one that says, as an action, you can spend 8 ship resources to gain 1 alien artifact. Ignore the assembly limit. Well, what is the assembly limit? Well, the assembly limit is you have a hand of 3 resource cards at any given time. You never have more than 3 in your hand when it comes to these resource cards here. And normally, the assembly limit is only allowing you to use 2 of the cards from your hand at a time. Now, you can prepare resources to pay for planets and ships and technologies. Once you start getting a vast amount of them, you're going to need to save resources in order to build ships, discover planets, and develop technologies. However, it says you are allowed to ignore the assembly limit, meaning you could use all 3 of your resource cards to spend 10 ships and gain an alien artifact. But here's the thing that I didn't really understand first. So, even if you had, let's see if I can find a resource card that has 3 ships on it, first of all, to explain this easier. Here we go. Okay, even if I had 3 of these, if I had 3 resource cards, and they all had 3 ships on them, that would only be 9 resources. And then, that's still not enough, because you need 10. So I was like, how am I supposed to get 10 when, at the most, at any given time, I would get 9? I can't really, and that's another thing. You can only prepare resources for ships you're going to build, for planets you're going to discover, and for technologies you're going to develop. So you're not really allowed to save resources for an action like this. So it took me a while to really figure that out. And this is where discovering planets is actually necessary. If you're going to want to play that skill, you are going to have to discover a planet, and instead of putting the planet on the logistics side, see, this is the logistics side, you have to play it on the operational side. And then all of the planets produce 3 resource cards on each planet every time you put this into the operational side when you build it, or discover it, I should say. And so then, you would have then 3 resources on this card, and maybe one of those is your last ship resource that you would need in order to beat the hand limit, because then you could use one of the resource cards on this planet here to make it total 10 or more in order to get the alien artifact. And that is the only way that I can think that you could get what you need in order to access that skill. So that was a doozy to try to figure out. I almost didn't play the game because I couldn't figure out how to get that to work. It took me forever to figure that out on my own, and I actually had to watch somebody play the game all the way through to understand how that actually worked, how it was possible. Now, I will say this. The alien systems, the alien artifacts are in here as well, and the defense plans are in there, because I actually understand those pretty well. I didn't have any problems really understanding all of those cards in here, and so I'm not really going to explain them because they were really easy to figure out on my own. But everything else kind of was a lot more difficult. Now, obviously, some things are easier than others. The planets are very easy. You put them in the logistics side, for instance, and you can reduce the buy cost of all 4 of the different resources for each planet. Obviously, 1 of the 4, of course. So, minus 2 credits, or minus 2 ships in the cost to build a ship. Obviously, the credits are for when you buy a card from the pile. So 2 credits less. 2 technologies less in order to develop a technology, for instance. Because the original price is 5. You start with 5. You must have 5 resources for planets, technologies, and ships. You must have 5 resources in order to do those. Develop, build, or discover. And so having this, for instance, reduce the cost of the discover a planet by 2 resources, that would drop it down to 3. Now, as you discover planets, though, ships, and develop technologies, you are going to actually be adding 1 to that resource. So you're going to have 5, and then when you, let's say you have discovered a planet, the next time you want to discover a planet, it's actually going to cost you 6 resources. But if this was the one you got, then that would drop it down by 2, so you'd have it costing 4 planet resources in order to discover another planet, for instance. And then there's obviously 1 for the ships as well. And that is very useful, and I understood that a lot. And I had tons of planets in play, or should I say tons of planets in my empire. But I didn't really have too many on this side at first, because I still didn't quite understand how to play, and I played the game without a full understanding of how I was going to use this skill, and I still never got the chance to, because I found out way too late how to actually get that. If I had known, I would have put some more planets on the building bonus to try to develop more ship technology, or ship resources. So that was kind of a bummer. I never actually got to use their skill to get an alien artifact. But I was able to get an alien artifact attacking alien systems. So that at least was nice. And all of the alien artifacts that I did acquire for me and, well, the other faction I was also playing as my first time playthrough. I was able to acquire a few for each of the factions. So that was awesome. And that is really cool. Those alien artifacts are really, really awesome. Powerful. So the alien artifacts are really powerful, and they're awesome. And you definitely want to get them if you can. That's totally worth it. Okay, we'll continue in the next video.